Good evening, everyone. You're in the first class of the CP Office Hours and CR Masterclass, where we intend to revise all the topics that are very, very important for you in critical reasoning for the Clat and ALET exam. Now, every time you look at critical reasoning, you have to be able to imagine it as something where you need to read and apply your brains, apply logic. Every time you look at critical reasoning, rather than looking at something extremely difficult or something that you don't understand, you should focus on concepts. So this masterclass is aimed at helping you work on those concepts. And those concepts are something that will help you build a foundation. With that foundation, you will be more confident, you will get practice and the good or correct logic behind the practice of critical reasoning. So, everything in critical reasoning is about a good foundation, good concepts, and a lot of practice and re-practice. At Clat Possible, the CR Black Book, trust me, is a great resource material which both the masterclass trainers, Sajal and I, we have sat down, written, curated, and put together these concepts that have been tested not just in Clat but also in ALET and other exams where critical reasoning forms the basis of selection. With that black book and this masterclass, we believe that you will be in a position to enter the critical reasoning section with a lot of clarity, with a lot of conceptual clarity, and with a slight degree of confidence once you have practiced enough. So let's begin with the first session of the masterclass, which is an introduction to the types of questions and how to answer them. So in today's session, I will focus on the kinds of questions you get so that you get a holistic understanding of the critical reasoning topics. You get a holistic understanding of exactly what you need to know and what should be your thought process in answering these questions. When you are asked a particular question, what do you have to answer in that? What are the not to be, what are the traps in that question? What is the right answering pattern in that question? So let's focus on that. Types of questions and how to answer them. So moving ahead with these types of questions and how to answer them, the first thing that you should know in critical reasoning is that there are three families of questions that are asked. Again, any logical or critical reasoning section, whether it is Clat, ALET, or it is LNAT, LSAT, these are the three families of questions that are there. There is a question that focuses on main point and must be true. Main point is the conclusion of the passage and must be true is the inferred conclusion. Main point focuses on understanding what the conclusion is, sometimes by recognizing the conclusion, and must be true is an inference oriented question which targets mostly the inferred conclusion, a conclusion which is not clearly written but you have to know it. The second family of questions is evidence family. I will elaborate on these three families. Evidence family has questions on strengthening, weaken, right, assumptions. And the third family of question is method of reasoning. Method of reasoning focuses on fallacies in reasoning and the role played by different sentences in an argument. I hope all of you understand that in critical reasoning, you have to read the arguments of the author. An argument is a point that the author puts across. An argument is a way that the author convinces you of something, and in putting across that point, the author basically gives you the point, which is the conclusion, and the supporting details, which are known as premises. So I will be using the terms argument, conclusion, and premises, and these are the broad meanings of the term argument, conclusion, and premises. Right? I will be going over the chat shortly for any questions. But first and foremost, let's come to main point and must be true family of questions. So these questions, what is it that they ask you? These questions ask you directly what the main point of the author is. Right? In these questions, you have to read the argument and identify what the author is trying to tell you. The questions look in the form of a direct question, what the main point is, what follows from the passage. These are all the question stems. The passage above supports which of the following conclusions? Another type of question here is, if the facts above are true, then what must be true? And each of the following follows from the passage except. So the except questions are also here. So this slide acquaints you of the question stems. These question stems are going to help you identify the main point or must be true question type. With the help of these stems, you will know, all right, in this question, I have to mainly look for the main point of the author. Once you have these stems, I will move on. So I'm going to leave it for another 10 seconds so that you make a note of the question stems. And in this family of questions, we have to read and identify what the author is trying to tell you. So what is it that you have to answer over here? In this family of questions, you have to identify the main point of the author, which in other words is the conclusion of the author. Right? Here, the answer could be either the entire passage in a little summary of sorts, or just the conclusion that you identify it. Right? Naturally, if it is a must be true question, the answers will also be in the form of inferences. Inferences are conclusions that you deduce from reading the passage which may not be directly given. Right? Of course, there is must be true here as well. And a point to be noted here is, you must remember that the conclusion of the author can be anywhere in the passage, not just the end. Since Clat gives you passages, the whole conclusion that you want to draw over there in the passage is, you have to deal with it like a RC central theme question. You have to read the passage, and from the passage, you have to deduce what is it that the author is trying to tell you. What is the point that the author is pushing by means of this passage? Maybe it's not written at one specific location. It could be anywhere in the passage. You know, it could be by, you could come to the answer by combining bits and pieces from all the paragraphs. Okay, this paragraph is dealing with problems, then this paragraph is dealing with the history, then in this paragraph the author is also trying to give a conclusion. So that means the conclusion over here is in the form of solution of the problem, or is it only the definition of the problem? So you have to read and find out, is the author only giving me the problems with, let's say, deep sea mining, or is the author also giving me solutions? Because if the solutions are there, then that means it's not just limited to the problem. So my main point would also be the solution that the author is trying to push. So as you read the passage, talk to yourself. Let the passage talk to you. Ask yourself, all right, the author has told me this and this. So what is it that the author is trying to push here? So this whole process where you try to take out the main point, deduce it, takes you to the must be true or inference category of questions. And sometimes the author clearly states why he or she has written the passage. Through this passage, I am trying to tell you this. In this passage, I will show you how this monetary policy is a very problematic policy. So that line specifies the purpose. So wherever the line specifies the purpose, you know now you are going to read reasons for this. So sometimes it is clearly stated, sometimes you have to do the work, and hence this is the category of that question. Right? So once you give me thumbs up, I'll just pick up my marker. Once you give me thumbs up, I will know that I can move on and take you to a sample question. Right. So this is a sample question from main point. The question starts with the line, it is probably within the reach of human technology to make the climate of Mars inhabitable, right? It might be several centuries before people could live there. But some of the world's greatest temples and cathedrals took centuries to build. Research efforts now are justified if there is even a slight chance of making another planet inhabitable. Besides, the intellectual exercise of understanding the Martian atmosphere might be changed, could help in understanding atmospheric changes inadvertently triggered by human activity on Earth. So, the simple question, the main point of the argument is, the main point of the argument is, and we have questions A, B, C, and D, and I'm expecting answers to come in just about now. So we pause for a few seconds for the answers to come in. And we are getting some answers. I can see a right answer there. Arya Bajpayee, the answer is correct. Rest of you, quickly check your answers again. So you might have noticed that some of the options here have, taken lines from the passage and written them. Now, in main point and in must be true, this becomes a very big challenge. How do I handle multiple options that are using the lines from the passage? Right? So remember, in every passage, you are supposed to identify the line which is the conclusion and other lines that are supporting the conclusion. If the option repeats the supporting lines, then it will not be your answer, because that was written just to support the conclusion and that conclusion is somewhere else. So always remember, is this line the conclusion or is it supporting the conclusion? So what is the author trying to tell you? Is the author trying to tell you that temples took so long to be made? Is that why the passage was written? Because we are talking about Mars and we are talking about life somewhere else in the universe. So is this passage about temples? If it is not, then don't bother with that option. That line was brought in, yes, but the passage is not about that line. So what is the passage about? Is the passage about the line that maybe we are able to find the life on Mars, or maybe we are able to change the climate of Mars? If yes, then what is the author saying? Is the line about just a maybe? Right? We may be able to change the climate of Mars, we may not be able to change the climate of Mars. Doesn't look like an assertive line. It probably looks like a status at the moment. So ask yourself, if it has to be a point or if it has to be a conclusion, it has to do something more than just pass on information which appears to be factual. Therefore, simple facts are not the conclusion. You know, because what they are facts, they are not the author's point. They are in the domain of facts, and everyone has facts available. So, why was that passage written? So, learn to differentiate between factual details and an assertive point. So, assertive points are of various types. What are these various types? I'm just digressing from the question for 30 seconds to tell you what assertive points look like. So, if the author has to assert a conclusion, what shape will this statement take? An assertive conclusion would probably be an advice which the author is trying to push, also known as a prescriptive conclusion. An assertive conclusion would be some kind of appraisal or a statement which is evaluative, which will say something like, this is good, this is bad, this is terrible, this is awful. If not an advice, at least it will make a remark on the state of things. This building is looking awful. No, we can't do this. This idea is terrible. So that kind of statement. It could be a prediction. I think we are going to win the World Cup, or India is really looking good. We will win so many gold medals. Prediction. Or an assertive statement must be like a must statement. A must statement which tries to do some kind of guesswork, or a statement which is a factual claim. Any kind of claim, where an advice is a should statement and a prediction is a will statement, therefore a must statement which does the work of guesswork. This must have happened. Oh, you must be feeling so cold. So this is your guesswork. She has not told you whether she is feeling cold or not, but you are guessing. So remember, before marking this kind of an answer, ask yourself, am I looking at the correct statement or not? Right? Is it just a fact? Why will the author write a whole passage or a paragraph just about a fact? Unless, of course, it's an informative passage, then it's not in the domain of critical reasoning, and then there is no main point. It's just a discussion or an information sharing. Then you choose that kind of an answer. But if the author is trying to make a point, these are the kind of statements you should be looking at. Right? So sorry for this little digression. I hope you have understood what I tried to tell you from here. And now we go back to the statement, right? So let us look at the first line. It's a probable statement. Probably we will be able to alter the climate of Mars, right? This is the information on which the whole passage is resting. So this is background information that there is some research or there is some knowledge or information in this domain where they say, yes, we might be able to change. So that's just background information. Now the author is probably making some point. It would take several centuries. We don't know whether we will ever be able to make Mars marginally inhabitable. The author is saying it might be several centuries, not that it would. Would makes it more sure. So it's a might statement, right? Maybe if it is possible, it will take several centuries. The author does bring in something about temples and cathedrals. It's an analogy. An analogy meaning parallel example. That if we were okay with waiting for several centuries for cathedrals to be built, why not wait for several centuries? So that means that the author is pushing this line. The author is saying, yes, research efforts are justified. This line translates into we should put the efforts. So it's an emphatic advice. Probably making life inhabitable or making Mars inhabitable, making life probable in Mars will take several centuries. And even if there is a slight chance that we are able to do it, we should do it. So the author's line to push is put the research, spend the time. Let's try to alter the environment of Mars or wherever life is possible. And the author moves into the word besides. A trivia on besides. Besides means you are giving more reason. So besides is an additional premise indicator, which means I'm adding more reasons for supporting my point. The author's point is, yes, let's work and get Mars to be inhabitable. What more reason do we need? We will be able to understand more about Earth. So maybe we put the research, we put the money, we put the time, and maybe no life was possible. Never mind, that research might tell us more about Earth also. So the author is trying to convince or put a conviction that this kind of research is purely justified. So saying yes, the research is justified, we should do it, it's like a should statement. And hence our conclusion, therefore the correct answer is option D. So through this question, I was able to show you the fact that just any line from the passage does not make a conclusion. Ask yourself, is that line just a fact? Then definitely it's an incorrect line you are choosing. It has to be some kind of assertive line. Then I went on to show you what assertive lines look like, the keywords. That will be extremely helpful for you to identify conclusions and differentiate them from other lines in the passage, other traps in the passage, right? So yes, the author has done this comparison. The author has compared making life inhabitable to temples. So it's an assumption. It's an assumption that the author has taken. Whenever the author uses any analogy, the analogy comes with the assumption. What is the assumption behind any analogy? Analogy means parallel example. I've written analogy here. The assumption behind any analogy is that the two things can be compared. I can compare two things to make you understand them better. Only when I feel these two things are comparable will I put the analogy. So yes, the author has done this. This is something which is an assumption. Anything that the author does inadvertently or advertently means that inside the author's mind that belief is there. Therefore, every belief becomes an assumption. Right? So we have brought in another keyword here, assumption. So this was the sample question. And let's take the discussion forward. Now we come to evidence family questions. Evidence family questions contain questions on strengthen, weaken, assumption, resolving the paradox. Let me add assumption to this list. Solving a problem. Now, this family of question vastly differs from the other family of question we have discussed, which is main point and must be true, right? Because this family of questions requires you to bring in a new piece of information. So, as the name suggests, evidence family question means you bring new information to as a resolution for the question. Strengthen, how will you strengthen the argument? By bringing one more reason. How will you weaken an argument? By bringing in the opposite reasons. By countering the author with the help of counterclaims and counter premises. How will you give the assumption? Assumption means missing premise or missing reason. So any one premise or any one reason which is missing, that is assumption. Assumption means hidden beliefs. Like in the previous question, the author used an analogy, and every time an author uses an analogy, the author assumes behind the analogy is the belief that yes, I can compare these two things. So hidden beliefs, missing reason. So in evidence family question, we resolve the question by bringing new information, which is diametrically opposite to main point question. In main point question, we do not bring any outside information. We do not bring any outside information. Whatever is given, we only use that and we answer within that passage what the conclusion is or what is the conclusion I can make out. But in evidence family, I find out the conclusion. The questions require me to either strengthen or weaken or resolve the paradox. I can do these three things only by means of choosing from the option some new information which will do the needful. This new information will be absolutely incorrect for main point answer. But for evidence family, this new information, if it is the correct option and relevant information, can strengthen or weaken basis what you have chosen. This is the highlight of this family. Remember, for critical reasoning, I hear children, they have learned it somewhere at faulty critical reasoning classes or at poor critical reasoning classes that no, this is not given, hence it's not the answer. Boss, if it is not given, great, it is not an answer in main point. But if it is not written, that's not the reason why it won't be the answer for evidence. In fact, that will probably be the reason why it is the answer for this family. Because here, the new information is the answer. What kind of information? It has to be relevant to the passage and it has to be relevant to the question. Only then it is the answer. So, strengthen questions, other than the word strengthen, can use words like support, agree, justify. Weaken questions, other than the word weaken, can use questions like counter, mitigate the validity of, jeopardize, challenge, call into question. Resolve the paradox questions will means that you have to give the reason why this paradox exists. What is a paradox? What is a paradox? A paradox is a situation where the opposite of the expected happens. It could be a paradox in economics, it could be a paradox in Science, it could be a paradox in human behavior, it could be a societal paradox, it could be any kind of paradox, right? So a paradox is when the opposite of the expected happens. So why did the opposite of the expected happen? Why were the rules not followed? So there must be some reason. That means what is that? It is a new piece of new information, because the paradox, the reason behind paradox is what you have to give from the option. It's not already written in the passage. So in this family of questions, you find the relevant piece of information which is not already given in the passage, or it is, you know, in contradiction with the passage if you have to weaken it. So you have to find that new information. And the answer lies in choosing the correct piece of new information from the option. If you have understood the rationale and principle behind evidence family, quickly give me a thumbs up in the chat box. So I have a question from some user with a very alphanumeric name. Yes, you can use a repetition from the passage in case of strengthen and weaken. So ideally, there should be new information to answer strengthen and weaken user with the alphanumeric name. But many times the question setter is lazy. To strengthen or to weaken, they don't give you a challenging enough new reason. They might just repeat the conclusion. Or to weaken, they might just contradict the conclusion, just put a knot in the conclusion. So that's the only relevant option. So yes, you will choose it. Now the strength of the question lies in the strength of the options. If the options give you new information, then you have to take the pain to see which information is doing the job and you choose it. But if the option is not giving you new information, it is just repeating the passage, then what can you do? You have to choose that. There is no, there's no two ways about it. One of the options has to be marked, and you might not find the right options in the sense that you might not find the perfect option. But if some option is doing the job, even if it is repetition of the conclusion, you will mark it, right? Once you have decided that yes, the other options are incorrect. Similarly with weaken, instead of giving a good piece of information to weaken, so that's just the laziness of the question setter. What can you do about it? So if it is just simply contradicting the conclusion by saying, if the conclusion said yes, this job was worth it, and the option is saying that job was not worth it, so they have just taken the pain to put not, you will choose it, right? So don't run after perfect options. Whatever you have is there in the 4 options in front of you. That's the world for that question. If there are lousy options but they are doing the job, right, you just mark them. And it's, you were looking at good options, fun options, intricate options, you were looking at fancy options, but the question setter did not provide you with those. Fine, you are disheartened, but at least do the job and come, right? I hope that answers the question. User with the alphanumeric name. Great. So we have got this thing lined up here. Of course, we will go in the masterclass, we will go into intricacies of strengthen, weaken, assumption, various types of them, and we will see a lot of good tips and tricks to handle these questions. So you must stay tuned for these masterclasses happening on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right? And we try to complete all these little questions in a lot of good ways and with a lot of tips and tricks. So let me just erase, right. Now, this is what I have already said. Quickly read this. So you hold the thought user with the alphanumeric name. What if there is another close option? Definitely there will be another close option in good questions. And hold that thought. Let's do such questions, right? Be a little patient, and in the masterclass, we will answer that through the question type, because I cannot give you one generic rule to handle close options. Close option means that the options run alike for certain period of time, and after that the options differ in a few keywords. So meaning of close option changes from question to question. There is no one rule to handle close option. So we read the close options together, see how much they are alike, and then look at the points from where they differ. And then we look at the keywords of the two options from where they differ from each other. And then the decision is based on choosing one set of keywords over the others. Right? I hope that answers your question without the close option question. And once we see close options, we will answer them. So yes, strengthen, you add a new premise. I've already shown and told you. Strengthen, the premise has to be added to as an extra premise to the existing set of reasons the author has given. In weaken, the new premise should nullify the author. You can't simply say the author is lying. Your premise should weaken the author's reason. It should give a new perspective to the reason, or it should provide with the latest reason and somehow show that the author's reason does not justify the conclusion. And in resolving the paradox, it should add a reason for the given paradox or anomaly, which I have already explained. And for assumption, the new premise should provide the missing reason or belief. So these one line each are your go-to for these questions, and we will solve a couple of these questions to see them. Let's go and solve these questions quickly. Let's read this passage and look for the answer which is supporting the conclusion. Read now. In evidence family, you will have the facts. Read the facts. Identify the conclusion. The facts will give you a phenomenon. What is the phenomenon? 2017, the number of bottle green grasshoppers was 10, and in 2013 they were 38. The author feels this is because 2013 was a super wet monsoon. That's why more bottle green grasshoppers could be seen, because they are active in monsoons. And 17 was the dry monsoon. To support the author, we have to say yes, monsoon is the only reason why this happened and no other reason. I've given you the hint. Give me the answer. Remember, the option should explain the difference in numbers. While you might see new information in more than two options, that information should be relevant. All right. So let's mark the conclusion. I'm getting some more answers. I'm getting some more answers. Just waiting for another 10 seconds. So let's look at this question, everyone. Bottle green grasshoppers remain motionless for hours at a stretch. They are more active in monsoons. Fact 1. 2017, 10 were seen. In 9 hours, 2013, 38 were seen in just about 2 hours. This difference probably does not reflect a drop in the population. However, what explains it? 2013 wet monsoon and 2017 dry. So that explains, because they are more active in wet monsoons, they came out and were seen in the 2 hours. Option A gives you some fact about the grasshopper, but does not explain why more were visible in 2013 and less in 2017. Also, the fact that the author, we have to support the author and say, yes, only monsoon or wet area defines it. The only habitat of the bottle green hoppers is around pools formed by the collection of winter rains in low-lying areas. So, great, fine. Let's see, that is the only habitat. It's not as if they are going to be anywhere, but why was it that at a particular place in 2013, 38 were seen and in 2017 only 10 were seen, right? So there has to be no other reason, we have to say. Again, C gives you another fact about them, but remember, we don't have to give random facts. We have to say why in 2013 population looked up and in 2017 it looked down. We don't have to say why. We don't have to look for an alternative reason, because if we give an alternative reason, then we are weakening it. We have to say no other reason. Look at D. No other reason explains it. So you are saying, yes, it must only be the dry monsoon, because it's not as if any predator has eaten those grasshoppers in the span of 2013 to 2017. And we are supporting the fact that it is not because of a drop in the population. How will a population drop? Suddenly, if there is a predator that eats them. Got it? Suddenly, if there is a predator that eats them. That would explain why from 13 to 17, a major portion of the food. They could have become a major portion of the food of some predator, but we are saying no. So how do we strengthen? By putting a no to an option that could weaken. By putting a no to an option that could weaken. How do we strengthen? By putting a no to an option that could weaken. Have you got it? We will practice more of these questions and then you will be able to do them better. This is just a glimpse into the types of questions. All right, let's do a quick weaken. It is truly a waste of time to attend college. Out of the 10 richest people, 6 are dropouts. Thus, if one wants to become rich, drop out of college. The conclusion is stated by the means of thus. Weaken it. So the author has given you statistics. If an author gives you statistics, the best way to weaken is to reinterpret the statistics, give more and better statistics. And I'm already getting the answers. Let me see. So I seem to be getting the correct answers. Just 5 more seconds. So I see that some of you have fallen for the trap option. I see that some of you have fallen for the trap option. Remember, if I say that doing this can make you strong, and you say, no, but doing that will make you even stronger. Weaken is not saying that the degree was low. Weaken is saying, no, boss, this is wrong conclusion. So whenever you see, you will become even stronger, even richer. So author says, do this, you will become smart. No, but if you do that, you will become even smarter. So weaken does not mean you change the degree. Weaken means you say that's wrong idea. That's a wrong notion. So this is a trap. Because they are already the richest in the world. What do you mean they'll become even richer? Right? So the best way to attack this is that you have just focused on the 10 richest people. This is not even 0.0001% of the population. What about others? You are only putting in statistics where they are in the 4th decimal place of the percentage of the population. Fine, let's not aspire for richest. There could be several reasons. They would have had family property, their parents would be super rich or whatever, and they don't have to do much and they are dropout and still they are rich. But they are representing 10 richest people, of which these are 6. So 10 is already 0.00001% of the population. These are 6, so even lesser. You give or talk about majority statistics. because the author is building the case of dropping out based on very small numbers. So you bring the heavy numbers. C is irrelevant. Social circle is irrelevant because the author is targeting becoming rich, not targeting becoming friendly. This is trap. Weekend means say your notion is wrong. Weekend doesn't mean you change the degree. So you talk about a bigger percentage, that every time a person drops out of college, probability or chances of that guy becoming rich are very small, because all the college goers statistics where people become rich and are self-made show the majority of people who finish college go on to being rich. Forget about just those 10 richest people. So you take bigger statistics and disprove the conclusion by showing the opposite as to how the majority statistics are pointing out. So every time you have to weaken a question which gives you statistics, fractions, percentages, remember you have to look for bigger statistics, because that guy, the author who you have to weaken, will be using, small group statistics. So that's a small tip here. It's a small little trick, a big trap that I've shown you. Never fall for this. And of course, we'll practice it in the separate class. And we come to the last segment for today, which is the final question type, method of reasoning and fallacies. I feel that everyone should study fallacies because fallacies clear all your reasoning blocks and loopholes. Once you study fallacies, not only do you see reasoning problems in the world, you also get a clearer picture of all question types in critical reasoning, because you understand argument structure extremely well. So it's a great class to attend, and it will be in one of the master classes. So good for you. So in fallacies, the type of questions that you get are: what is this statement doing in the argument? Is it the reason? Is it the conclusion? Is it a counterclaim? Then you also get a question on how has the author structured the argument, or how has the author reached the conclusion. So you say the author has started by giving data, or you say the author has started by giving a percentage, or the author has made an analogy. So we have already done 3-4 types of arguments here to know how to answer this. You also get dialogues in method of reasoning question. Speaker 1 says something, speaker 2 says the other thing. So speaker 2 responds to speaker 1 by what? By challenging it, by showing a problem in the data. So these are the kind of questions you get, and of course you get questions to find out the faults in the argument. So this is a whole list of things that we do in method of reasoning. It's an extremely helpful CR class. We usually cover it in by using this family of questions. We usually cover it in 2 or 3 classes, where we do regular method of reasoning, give the students practice in identifying the role, what is the role of this statement, what is the role of this statement, or we do it by showing parallel reasoning, etc. Right? So a very interesting class, gives you a lot of clarity on how arguments are structured, a lot of practice, and helps you a lot in other family of questions, because your understanding of arguments becomes very clear. Right? So these were the 3 families of questions. These are the types of questions that are asked. We did some practice also. And now we will proceed with the master class by breaking this down into different families and different question types. And in the master class, we will do the most commonly asked questions, because it's going to be, a short, quick stint of improving your critical reasoning. Right? So I had a lovely class with you today, and I hope you did too. And stay tuned here 8 to 9, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at the CR Masterclass, and get concept clarity like never before. That was all from my side. Have a great evening, guys. I had a lovely time interacting with all of you.